I'm going to be talking about data sharing and how it's effectively changing healthcare. I've structured the talk today basically into three pieces. The first one is about empowerment, how data enables empowerment, patient empowerment. The second one, I'm going to give some insights on the stuff we did with patient registries in Europe. It's about secondary use of data that's already existing and how can we add further value to it. And the last piece is going to be about what's behind the corner. And yes, I will start with speaking a bit about the stuff we need to do to support patient empowerment, patient engagement, and patient empowerment. Ultimately, we know the traditional care model, which is we've got some data, we've got some clinical knowledge, which is controlled by the healthcare provider and then fed to the relatively passive patient. As we move towards patient engagement, we're trying to, the physicians are trying to, the health providers are trying to give some of the activities, some of the tasks to the patient to perform some of those tasks. But the patient is still not really in control of his or her health. And the next step, and the step which we really want to achieve, is the patient empowerment, in which the patient also has influence over what's being performed and what he or she might want to choose. And to do that, we need to provide certain things to the patient as well, and we've talked about it. We need to provide two key things. One is information about the individual's health status. And the other one is contextual knowledge about what that patient, with that information, can do, what are the choices that he or she can make. The problem is, in order to do that, we need some enablers. And these enablers, in our case, it's rather straightforward. It is, in most of the cases, it's e-health, m-health. So technology does provide this enablement of empowerment. Of course, technology is just one of the key drivers and enablers. As we've heard also today, it's not just about technology. If you just throw out technology, it's going to fail. There's the 80% of other stuff that needs to be done, organizational, regulation, etc., without which the technology itself is not going to work. But still, what is here is we've got affordable technology, we've got these wearables, invisibles, ingestibles, all these kinds of devices. They are connecting us 24/7 to the internet. They're providing loads of data, which are oftentimes unreliable, but still can be used in a meaningful manner. And what they're creating is these huge amounts of data, which are not anymore useful as such, because there's so much of it. So what we need to do is we need to also learn how can we analyze the data to make the data meaningful and to avoid physicians, healthcare providers, or patients just basically shoveling through these loads and loads of data. But ultimately, all of these enablers lead to the empowered patient. They lead to personalized medicine, which means that you can tailor the services to an individual. And they also lead to what I would say is we could call a new public health paradigm, which is, I would say, e-public health, which again shifts the way public health is being done. Now, if we just look at a couple of examples, can you tell me how many of you have heard of Patients Like Me, for example? Okay, excellent. So Patients Like Me is a platform that basically connects patients with similar problems, brings them into a social network, but also provides a way to structurally enter information about your health, about your disease, about your treatments, about the progress of the disease, etc. And it's greatly changed the way patients can access information about their disease, about the peers that they can talk to, reach out, get information on where they are, what's going to happen with them next, etc. Contextual knowledge. This is a very tricky thing. And I'm going to give you an example coming from Patients Like Me again. It's been published a couple of years ago in a Journal of Medical Informatics Research. And it's been shown that patients using the Patients Like Me portal have been reporting that there's a particular drug that they've been using basically off-label for something else. But it wasn't just that single person there, that single person over there. it has turned out that there's been a lot of them using that drug for that particular off-label purpose. And if this portal was not existing, these patients were spread across the entire US, and it's a rare disease, so you wouldn't be able to pinpoint that use. But given that the platform was there, you could actually notice that there is a pattern, that there were people actually using it. Eventually, the drug's label was changed so that they can also prescribe the drug for this particular purpose as well. So by empowering patients, you can even extract new knowledge coming out of it. Now, about the public health paradigm. Public health is, we know, up until now, it's mainly been one-way road. So what you would do, if you were a public health expert, you would analyze data, you would make conclusions, you would prepare some recommendations, and you would design campaigns, and then you would deliver those campaigns. And you would work with populations or subpopulations, but you couldn't go much further into breaking down those subpopulations. Imagine now we've got personal health records, we've got all that quantified self-data available online, and people are willing to share that data with the healthcare system. We've got all these social networks and the channels, again, providing a lot of this information. So public health can also use this information to tailor the messages that it's sending back to the population. And for example, if I'm not a non-smoker, why should I receive a leaflet about the benefits of not smoking? I should receive another leaflet because my time is limited, my attention span is limited. So we as public health experts really need to pinpoint the messages that we're going to send to these individuals, not just shoot all over the place. And also, another very important source for public health services is the World Wide Web. Probably you've heard of Google Flu Trends. Have you heard of Google Flu Trends? Anyone? Google Flu Trends is basically looking at the search patterns that people use all across the world using Google search. And they have extrapolated that if people start looking for search terms like headache, fever, sore throat, they've matched that to the demographics data, and they've pointed out that there is a correlation between flu incidence and the search trends. And they've built a service which monitors possible flu outbreaks all over the world. And you can, if you want, you can just Google flu trends. But we call this basically infodemiology, infovalence. So harnessing the potential of the web to extrapolate data. Twitter has been used for the same purpose as well. In Toronto, they've made a study where they were looking at Twitter feeds, and they could foresee people coming to general practitioners for about 2 days in advance, similarly related to influenza-like diseases. Next thing, how can we support care? How can we enable care in what we would call personalized medicine? I've got 2 slides from John Crawford of IBM, who is talking about the stuff that they're doing with Watson and with their analytics stuff. And what they do is they can collect vast amounts of trajectories of patients. And what they're doing then, if you come to see them as a patient, the physician would be able to match your trajectory to a number of other patients who have already been on this trajectory and have proceeded further down this trajectory than you have. So given that you have a large enough number of similar patients, they're actually able to predict what are the possible outcomes for you. And an example would be giving a particular drug and foreseeing the effects of the drugs this might have on your system. And this is, I think, we are slowly getting there. There's still some of the issues related to acquiring that data, privacy, etc. But if we get there, this is going to be a huge improvement in terms of providing additional tools to help physicians make better informed decisions, reduce a number of risks associated with treatment. And yes, if we look at, so coming back to data, the clash of the titans, it's not just about data. It's about being able to pull meaningful context-related information out of these huge amounts of data. We've got the Google Health, now Google Fit, sorry for the typo in the kit. We've had Apple recently launching HealthKit. We've got Microsoft, who has launched Health Vault quite some time ago, and now basically rebranded or added some API to it and calling it Health. We've got these truckloads of new smart devices coming out every week. But all in all, if this wants to actually add value, it needs to have analytics, it needs to have prediction. We've talked about how can we improve provision of care, how can we influence the patients to do something better, to do something about their health better. And I've given a talk a couple of years ago about how can we draw parallels between games and the way people engage in social networks, and whether we can apply some of these dynamics to healthy lifestyle and chronic disease management. And the funny thing is, we are used to this concept of pain and reward following closely one another. So we are willing to endure a pain like giving out our credit card to pay for new shoes or to pay for a new set of clothes, because we know that there's a reward coming up. And this is something that we're being fed all the time. This is consumerism. Games also provide this same mechanism. Social networks also. We post something on Facebook because we would like people to notice that, and we would like people to like that back. That gives us pleasure. And it's been observed that, the problem with healthy lifestyle is, if your physician tells you, well, you need to eat vegetables for the next 25 or 30 years, and you ask him, well, and what about the reward? And the physician says, well, you might not get a particular disease in 20 to 30 years if you eat vegetables every day. That's really not a pain and reward that we can handle. It's just too far away for us. So what we've been doing, and what loads of people have been doing in the meantime, is we're trying to add these little rewards on the trajectory towards better health. So we define what healthy lifestyle means and what people should be doing, and then we're adding little rewards on the road to the final reward, and it seems to work. So we usually call it gamification of healthcare, and it's been introduced into lifestyle management. So if you're using Fitbits, if you're using all these gadgets, they have these things built in, so you compete with others, or you get badges to do something. But the same dynamics can be easily introduced into chronic disease management as well. And you're going to say, well, yes, but then if you use a smartphone, and then if you put all these things on a smartphone, then people will be just sitting sedentary and then typing this stuff into the app. Well, you can overcome that as well. You can use geocaching. So you can use geocaching, geolocation. You can say you only earn credit if you take a walk which is 5 miles long. And we've got this geo-enabled smartphone which measures whether you've actually walked or not. So there's ways of actually engaging people into physical activities as well. Yes, if interested, there's the link. And then the final element, influence of the patient, the final element of patient empowerment, the influence of the patient on the choices about his or her health care. And here, as we've heard also today, this is something that we need to be working on. We need to provide ways for people to have this choice, but we must always be aware it's not in any case, and it's not for everyone. We've seen Europe also, making a clear statement about this, saying putting patients in the driving seat. It's been a couple of years ago. It's been published, a mission statement, what we are all supposed to be doing in the healthcare. We are supposed to engage the patient. But I would recommend an interesting TED talk from Baba Shiv, who said, well, yes, there's, in 95% or 90% this works. There are cases, however, when this does not work. Either the patient is not capable or does not want to do it, and we must be careful that we also provide channels to support those patients as well. And again, there is some caution needed. There's been, examples of hacking attacks of cardiac rhythm devices. You don't want your cardiac rhythm device to be hacked remotely, right? There's been examples of wrongfully using IT to do melanoma detection, which in the way that it's been used was just actually plainly dangerous. And there's been a number of of access control breaches, so people seeing data that they shouldn't be seeing. But these are all the things that are manageable, which we can solve on the long run. These things do not prevent us using technology to support better healthcare. The health data landscape in Europe and in the US is quite complicated. We could easily spend hours talking about it. This is just for your personal reference. If you're interested in more of this, these are some of the things that you might be looking at. We're looking at some of the open data initiatives. There's a very good report on Pharma 3.0. It's 2 years old now. In US, you've got the HIPAA and the HITECH Act, the Accountable Care Act, and the Meaningful Use documents, which stipulate how should or could e-health be used in healthcare. We've got a very good recent paper on mHealth, on mobile health, produced by the European Commission. It's a very good read. And then we've got some of the existing legislation in Europe, like the Personal Data Protection Directive. So at first, currently, the directive is in place, but there's a proposal on personal data protection regulation, which we're expecting, and it's going to have quite a big influence on the landscape. And if you're interested in more, there's the eHealth Network, guidelines, multi-annual work plans, and a number of projects which, if you're interested, you can just drop me an email and I'll provide more information to you. Some of the more important ones: EPSOS, Semantic HealthNet, Expand, Parent, etc. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes about Parent because it's work we've been doing in the last years, and it's been very complex. We've spent a lot of energy on it. We've made these minor steps towards reaching a bigger goal. And we've had partners from Ireland contributing a great deal. We've had HICA contributing a lot. We've got someone here, Dimitri, who has been one of the key proponents in driving the guidelines. And let me tell you a bit about it. So the Parent Cross-Border Patient Registries Initiative was all about looking at this huge amount of patient registries which are in place in hospitals across Europe, looking at similar things like arthroplasty registry, or a particular medical device registry, or a registry of patients with a particular rare disease. And it's interesting that you've got these vast amounts of data in individual countries. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to connect these sources together and draw conclusions on top of them. And our goal was to say, can we identify these patient registries? Where are they located? Can we access that data? Can we tap into that data for secondary purposes? Can we, if we're able to tap into them, can we understand the data in the same way? Someone might be using ICD-9 to structure diagnosis. Someone might be using ICD-10. And it sounds trivial, but it might take you 2 months to just overcome that barrier. And after all, even if we're able to understand, do we have the processes to actually pull data from one registry to a central location to do analysis? And we've set ourselves a goal to do this and to try to provide some tools and some guidelines on how we should establish patient registries so that in the future we're going to be able to utilize the data and the knowledge coming out of these registries across Europe. We said there's basically 2 key use cases in patient registries which we need to focus on. The first one is we've got existing registries which are not interoperable in a way that we would like them to be interoperable. We've got these new registries popping up every week, which we would like to help them, when they set them up, to be interoperable from the start. So the first use case was about the registries and how can we make them more interoperable. And we've designed a number of solutions and guidelines to help them be more interoperable. And also in this use case, we said, can we develop an assessment tool so that if you have a registry and you would want to know whether you can exchange data with someone else, can you assess this? And we are designing this assessment tool as well. And the second use case was all about using the data. So the first one was about getting the data together, and the second one was about finding the right data and using it. And again, here we said we need to provide a service with which a researcher or a public health expert is able to identify the relevant sources. Let's say I'm looking for arthroplasty surgery cases because I want to study a particular implant. So I would like to know which countries, which regions have these particular registries. And then again, going more and more into detail, can we help these researchers to structurally search the data? And can we broker the data exchange between these registries? So it's been an interesting journey, and I'm unfortunately I'm not working anymore for Parent. I have switched jobs, as we've heard at the start. I'm working for Medtronic now, but the team behind it, including Irish people here in the audience, are working on this, and I'm convinced that there's going to be some good results coming out of it. The way we're structuring these deliverables, I'm not going to go into details. It's very late. And we've got a couple of more things that I would like us to cover. But the good thing is that we can see some of the results coming out already. We have had a number of smaller pilots with European Society of Cardiology to use what we call the registry of registries. We've got an arthroplasty case where we collect data across Europe. We've got the Ministry of Health using the registry of registries to assess their own registries in rare diseases. We've got a national arthroplasty registry being set up using our tools, and we're hoping to have the Irish Skin Society also in a pilot case establishing a registry as well. The benefits for doing this, it does seem a bit complex. Patient registries as itself is a complex thing, and then merging data across patient registries. But actually, if you do an analysis of the stakeholders, there's a lot of benefits spread around all the way from the European Commission, the European Reference Network, Joint Research Center, to the member states, to the various stakeholders in the countries, including pharma, device industry, research organizations. And for us in Parent, the key issue was how can we make what we developed sustainable, and how can we make it available? And we said that what we want to do is basically we are not going to impose to the patient registries what the technology is that they should be using to set up registries. But we want to provide them a very thin common layer of meaning of data, so which they can employ. And if they employ it using any kind of technology, they're still going to be able to share and exchange data between themselves. So we have made a choice to try OpenAir as the approach for semantic interoperability, and we're now in the stage of getting these recommendations and these tools formally adopted by the member states and various EC initiatives. And the thing that we're still missing, and I think that's going to be the focus of the next joint action, is clearly on the patient focus. We've been so busy with some of the more interoperability issues that we've placed too little focus on the patients. And I think now it's time that we need to start looking at patient-reported outcomes, benchmarking, and then thinking about scenarios where we can provide this information back to the patients so that we make a shift around what the registries are here for. Of course, initially the registries were here for the physicians to be able to monitor the populations that they manage. But eventually, don't we want the patients to be wanting to be engaged in a registry because that provides them with a clear benchmark of where is their care towards what the health system provides otherwise and provides to others. So I think there's a bright future ahead of patient registries, and I think patients are going to play a very important role in this future vision. I only have 3 slides on Medtronic. I'm not going to sell anything to you, to be honest. But it's interesting. I've recently joined. I've only been there for a week, and I must say I'm quite fascinated by the way that they understand healthcare. And Medtronic itself used to be a device, is a device producing company. They provide pacemakers, stents, spinal support stuff, a huge array of very useful devices. But they also saw that there's a need to help improve the way healthcare is being done. And we are now spending a great deal of time and effort to try to understand the way the care process or the care pathway or the entire care continuum should look like, and how can we improve that process. So we've got all this knowledge in, for example, Lean Sigma to help hospitals be more efficient, in process design to prevent patients from falling out of a process of care and someone forgetting that there should be a feedback, etc. And there's a lot of, all these red crosses are these little pain points where you can actually make improvements. And this is how what we do is structured. We're looking at how can we identify the patients who are not receiving optimal care. How can we ensure that they are receiving optimal care? There's the element that deals with making sure that the patients are aware of the treatment that they're entitled to and getting sure that they get that treatment. We deliver that therapy, but also it's not just about delivery, it's also about making sure that the devices or the procedures continue to serve the patient to the greatest use. Yes, and there's pilots in place now which are very promising, and there's a huge experience pool coming from the US with over 80,000 patients already daily being served with telecare. So I'm quite happy, and I see that there's going to be a lot of stuff to be done in Europe as well. And this is where I stop with the more industry-driven announcements. And I would like to move to the final conclusions. If we look at the lessons learned in the couple of last years, if we want to change the way healthcare is delivered, we need to build platforms, not just IT platforms, but usually stakeholder social platforms to make sure they're all connected. We need to make sure to engage patients, and I've had a very interesting slide which I removed, but patients, as also Dave said, we as patients are an incredibly valuable resource. If I were speaking to physicians, I would say patients are the cheapest resource because they do the work for free, right? And remember, if you go shopping, if you went shopping 20 years ago, you would go up to the counter, you would say, can you give me half a kilo of, or you would say half a pound of ham or a loaf of bread or something, and then someone would go and pick it up and slice it and bring it to you. And then you would give them the money and they would charge you and then give you back the receipt. How does it look like today? You go to a shopping mall, you take the scanner, you take the stuff out of the shelves, you scan them, put them into the trolley by yourself, you go to the checkout by yourself, you insert the credit card by yourself, get the receipt, go out by yourself. There's basically what the fast-mover consuming goods industry has done is they have taken almost all of their stuff that dealt with us, the customers, out of the equation and replaced them with us. So we do that ourselves, right? And healthcare has all this potential which has not been used yet. And we've got all this potential which we will need to use if we want to be still sustainable in 10 years to come or 5 years to come. Anyway, in order to get there, there needs to be incentives. We are really weak in providing incentives. We've had a number of good projects which have failed because someone did not have time to do it, or someone did not get paid for doing that, etc. So incentives are a key thing, and we keep forgetting about them. And as far as data and registries is concerned, it's a long-distance race. It's not going to be done tomorrow, but we need to make sure that we try to coordinate all these activities. So if you're setting up a registry, Google for stuff. Don't start just developing it from scratch, but look around and find our guidelines and use them because they are useful. Of course, empowering patients, we've talked about that a lot. Using data smartly, we've talked about that a lot. And we need to also change the design of the healthcare system, and we've talked about that a lot as well. Open data, yes, but there is some caution needed. And as far as EU registries is concerned, there's some ways, we've got ideas on how this should be solved in future. Probably it goes to central authorities running some of the IT interoperability assets, as we call them, including common data elements. But it is a bit complex, but in the end, we have a way of dealing with that. So if you're interested in more, just let us know. Dimitri has everything in his head. I've got everything in my head, and we'll be glad to share that with you. So thank you so much for the attention.